The rain-slicked sidewalk gleamed under the sodium glow of streetlights, turning the city into a blurred watercolor of indifference. Sophia huddled in the shadow of an overflowing dumpster, her thin jacket no match for the autumn chill that seeped into her bones like an old betrayal. She was 12 or maybe 13, time lost its edges when survival became the only clock. Her dark hair clung to her face in wet strands, and her eyes, wide and haunted, fixed on the families spilling out from the warm diner across the street. Laughter echoed from inside, muffled by glass windows, fogged with breath. A mother adjusted her son's scarf. A father hoisted a giggling toddler onto his shoulders. Sophia's fingers tightened around the frayed edge of a cardboard sign that read, "Anything helps," but her stomach twisted, not from hunger, but from the ache of what she'd never known again. Abandoned months ago by an uncle who vanished with promises of return, she watched them, invisible, a ghost among the living, until the low rumble shattered the night. It started as a distant thunder, growing into a symphony of engines that vibrated through the pavement like the heartbeat of some ancient beast awakening. Headlights pierced the rain, a convoy of chrome and leather slicing through the downpour. 50 bikes, maybe more, rolled in formation down the empty avenue, their riders clad in weathered vests, emblazoned with a faded emblem, an iron promise etched in thread. Leading them was Ethan, a man whose face bore the scars of roads long traveled and wars half forgotten. His beard streaked with grey, eyes sharp as switchblades under the brim of his helmet. He throttled back as the group slowed near the diner. The others fanned out behind him, engines idling like patient guardians. Ethan spotted her first, Sophia, shrinking back as the noise overwhelmed her fragile world. He killed his engine with a flick of his wrist, the sudden silence amplifying the patter of rain. Dismounting with the ease of someone who'd done it 1,000 times, he approached slowly, hands visible, no threat in his stride. "Hey, kid," he said, voice gravelly but kind, crouching to her level. "You look like you could use a dry spot." The other bikers watched, a wall of quiet strength, as Sophia's fear cracked just enough to let a sob escape. In that moment, Ethan's old vow to protect the lost, as he'd once failed to protect his own, stirred like embers in the wind. This girl, this fragile spark in the storm, would bind them all in a ride that redefined family. Ethan's crew, the Iron Vow Riders, weren't the monsters the city whispered about. They were veterans, mechanics, fathers who'd traded battlefields for backroads, bound by a pact forged in the dust of a desert skirmish 2 decades past. Ethan had been the youngest then, promising his squad they'd always have each other's backs, no matter the cost. Life had scattered them, divorces, debts, the slow grind of regret, but the rumble of engines always called them home. Tonight they'd gathered for a routine ride, honoring a fallen brother with a midnight procession. But as Ethan extended a gloved hand to Sophia, pulling her gently from the shadows, the air shifted. One rider, a burly man named Marcus with tattoos mapping old wounds, dismounted and shrugged off his jacket, draping it over her shivering shoulders. "Smells like leather and freedom," he muttered with a wink, diffusing her terror. The group encircled her loosely, not trapping, but shielding, their presence a fortress against the indifferent night. Sophia hesitated, her small frame trembling as she glanced back at the diner families, now staring from the windows with a mix of curiosity and unease. Why these strangers? Why now? Ethan's mind raced to his own ghosts. A daughter lost to illness years ago, a promise to her that he'd make the world safer for kids like this. "We're not leaving you here," he said firmly, his voice cutting through the rain like a vow renewed. He radioed the group via the comms in their helmets. "Brothers, we've got a mission. She's one of us now." The chorus of affirmatives crackled back, engines revving in unison, as if the machines themselves agreed. They led her to a sidecar on one of the bikes, a relic from better days, padding it with spare blankets from their saddlebags. As Sophia climbed in, clutching the jacket like a lifeline, the convoy reformed. The diner patrons watched in stunned silence as the bikes peeled away, taillights fading into the mist, carrying the girl toward an uncertain dawn. The ride blurred the city into streaks of neon and shadow, the wind whipping Sophia's hair as she clung to the rider beside her. Ethan rode point, his mind a whirlwind of questions. Who was she? Where were her people? But deeper, a resolve hardened. No child deserved the streets. They pulled into the compound on the outskirts, a sprawling garage ringed by chain link and floodlights, where the air smelled of oil and welding sparks. Women from the crew, wives, sisters, the unbreakable backbone, emerged from the warmth of the clubhouse, towels and hot cocoa in hand. "Easy now," one said, a nurse named Clara with steady eyes and calloused hands. She knelt, checking Sophia for signs of distress, her touch maternal without pity. The girl flinched at first, then leaned in, the exhaustion winning over suspicion. Inside, the fire crackled in a stone hearth, casting flickering shadows on walls lined with photos of rides past. Grinning faces, dusty horizons, memorials to those gone. Ethan sat across from Sophia at a scarred oak table, steam rising from mugs of soup. "Name's Ethan," he introduced himself, the others nodding in turn. "We don't pry unless you want us to, but you're safe here, that's a promise." Sophia's voice was a whisper, barely audible over the dying rain outside. "Sophia, my uncle. He said he'd come back, but he didn't." Tears traced clean paths through the grime on her cheeks. Ethan's jaw tightened, memories of his own broken oaths surfacing. He'd walked away from the military a shell, vowing never to let the innocent suffer again. This was his chance, a ripple in the pond of fate. As the night deepened, the crew shared stories around the fire, tales of rescues on forgotten highways, of standing against crooked officials who'd turned a blind eye to the vulnerable. Marcus recounted a run-in with a shady landlord years back, how the iron vow had exposed his scams without a fist thrown, just truth and persistence. Sophia listened, her eyes widening, the fear ebbing into something like wonder. For the first time in months, she felt seen, not as a burden, but as kin. Ethan watched her, the weight of leadership settling heavier. Word would spread. Authorities might come sniffing, questioning why a pack of bikers had a kid in tow, but loyalty didn't bend to suspicion. By morning, plans formed. Clara would handle the paperwork, calling in favors from a sympathetic social worker. The crew would vouch for her, build a case for guardianship. It wasn't legal yet, but in their world, promises held more weight than stamps. Dawn broke, with a pale light filtering through grimy windows, the compound stirring to life. Sophia woke in a bunk bed, the scent of coffee and bacon drawing her down. Ethan stood by the garage doors, polishing his bike, the metal gleaming like hope renewed. She approached shyly, the borrowed jacket still wrapped around her. "Thank you," she murmured. He ruffled her hair gently. "Family's what we make it, kid, and you're ours now." The engines fired up again, a new ride beginning, not just across asphalt, but toward redemption. But shadows loomed, whispers of her uncle's dark ties, hints of why he'd fled. The iron vow would face them, bound by the oath that had survived worse storms. For Sophia, the sidewalk was a memory. Ahead lay roads untraveled, with brothers at her back. The sun climbed higher over the compound, painting the rusted chain-link fence in hues of burnished gold. But the warmth did little to chase the chill of uncertainty from Ethan's bones. He leaned against his bike, the cool metal of the handlebars grounding him as Sophia's tentative footsteps crunched on the gravel behind him. The garage hummed with morning activity, wrenches clinking against engines, the sharp tang of fresh coffee mingling with the earthy scent of dew-kissed asphalt. Marcus was already under a chopper, his broad shoulders flexing as he talked a bolt, while Clara bustled in the kitchenette, flipping pancakes with the precision of someone who'd patched up more than just wounds. The Iron Vow riders moved like a well-oiled machine, each member a cog in the unbreakable gear of their shared oath. Sophia hovered at the edge of the group, the oversized jacket swallowing her frame, its leather scent now familiar, like a shield woven from strangers' kindness. She clutched a mug of cocoa, steam curling up to soften the sharp lines of her face. Ethan turned, offering a nod that carried the weight of unspoken assurances. "Breakfast first, questions later," he said, his voice low, steady as the idle rumble of a bike at rest. They gathered around a makeshift picnic table under the awning, plates piled high with eggs and toast scavenged from the clubhouse stores. Laughter bubbled up as Tyler, a wiry veteran with a quick grin and ink-sleeved arms, recounted a botched repair job from last summer's rally, how the bike had coughed smoke like a dragon before sputtering to life. Sophia's lips twitched in what might have been a smile, the first crack in her armored silence. But the idyll shattered with the crunch of tires on the access road. A nondescript sedan pulled up, its engine cutting off with a finality that set Ethan's jaw. Out stepped a woman in a crisp blazer, badge glinting on her hip, social services or something close, her eyes scanning the compound like a hawk eyeing prey. Behind her, a uniformed officer lingered by the car, hand resting casually near his belt. Clara met them at the gate, her nurses calm a bulwark against intrusion. "Morning," she said evenly, blocking the path without aggression. "What brings you out here?" The woman, Detective Reyes, she introduced herself, flashed a photo of Sophia, the image grainy but unmistakable. "We've had reports. A girl matching this description, picked up by your group last night. We need to talk to her, and to you." Ethan rose slowly, wiping his hands on a rag, his presence drawing the others like iron to a lodestone. The air thickened, the sizzle of bacon fading into tense quiet. Sophia shrank back toward the garage, her eyes darting to Ethan for anchor. He stepped forward, hands open, voice measured. "She's safe. That's all you need to know right now." Reyes's gaze sharpened, flicking over the bikes lined like silent sentinels, the emblem on their vests, a clenched fist around a broken chain, symbol of vows unbroken. "Safe. With a crew like this, we've got protocols, Mr. Ethan Hale," he supplied, meeting her stare. "And yeah, protocols, but they've failed her before. We're not handing her over to a system that spits kids back onto the streets." The standoff stretched, the sun beating down on sweat-beaded brows, the distant hum of city traffic a mocking reminder of the world beyond their walls. Marcus emerged from the garage, wiping grease from his hands, his bulk a quiet threat without a word. Tyler hung back, radioing the perimeter riders to circle closer, engines growling in the distance like thunder on the horizon. Reyes held her ground, but doubt flickered in her eyes. Stories of the Iron Vow weren't all shadows. Whispers of their aid in disasters, their stands against neglect, had reached even the precincts. Her uncle's file. "It's complicated," she admitted, voice lowering. "Signs of instability. We think he might come looking." Sophia's breath hitched, the mug trembling in her grip. Ethan glanced at her, the pieces clicking, the uncle's vanishing act, the haunted look in her eyes, not just abandonment, something darker, echoes of debts unpaid, ties to shadows the streets bred. Clara intervened then, her voice a bridge of reason. "Let me handle this. I'm licensed, and I've seen enough cases to know when a kid's better off here than in foster limbo." She pulled Reyes aside, murmuring about evaluations, temporary custody, the web of favors the crew could call in. The detective hesitated, the officer shifting uncomfortably as the perimeter bikes rolled into view, a rolling testament to their resolve. No aggression, just presence, an unbreakable line drawn in chrome and loyalty. Finally, Reyes nodded, handing over a card. 24 hours. Then we revisit. But if anything goes sideways... Ethan took the card, crumpling it slightly in his fist. It won't. Not on our watch. As the sedan retreated down the road, dust swirling in its wake, the compound exhaled. Sophia rushed to Ethan's side, her small hand brushing his arm. My uncle, he wasn't good. Said things about owing people, money, favors. That's why he left me. Her words hung heavy, the morning light casting long shadows that mirrored the ones in her voice. Ethan knelt, level with her, the scent of oil and rain clinging to him. Then he's the one who owes now. We protect our own. The crew gathered closer, nods rippling through them like a vow renewed. Tyler clapped Marcus on the back, the burly man grunting approval. This wasn't just about one girl, it was the oath stirring again, the promise from desert sands to defend the vulnerable against the corrupt veins of the city. By midday, plans solidified around the scarred table, maps unrolled like battle strategies. Clara sketched out legal angles, calling a contact at the local aid office, a fictional family shield network they'd leaned on before. Ethan traced routes on the paper, eyes narrowing at potential trouble spots. The uncle's last known haunts, dive bars where whispers turned to threats. "We ride smart," he said, voice gravel over steel. "No charging in blind, truth first, always." Sophia watched, absorbing it all, the fear in her eyes morphing into a spark of belonging. The engines fired up for a scouting run, the roar a symphony of solidarity, carrying them toward the heart of the storm. But as they geared up, a lone rider peeled in from the east. Joshua, the scout with eyes like a hawk and scars from patrols long past. He killed his engine, helmet off, face grim. Spotted a tail last night. Black SUV circling the diner before we rolled out, plates traced to some low-level enforcers. Her uncle's in deep, debts to the wrong crowd. The air crackled with tension, the sun now a harsh interrogator overhead. Ethan's fist clenched on the throttle, the old war promise burning brighter. They weren't just riders anymore, they were guardians, and the road ahead twisted with moral shadows that demanded justice, not vengeance. For Sophia, the family she glimpsed from the sidewalk was no longer a dream. It was armor forged in loyalty, ready to ride into the fray. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The afternoon sun hung heavy over the compound, turning the air thick with the metallic tang of heated chrome and the faint, acrid bite of exhaust fumes lingering from the scouting bikes. Ethan stood at the edge of the gravel lot, his boots planted firm as he watched Joshua dismount, the scout's leather vest creaking with the motion. Joshua's face, etched with lines from too many sun-baked patrols, carried the weight of bad news like an extra saddlebag. The crew had paused their prep, tools set aside, eyes turning toward the newcomer as Sophia edged closer to Clara. The nurse's arm, a steady anchor around her shoulders. The girl's wide eyes reflected the flicker of fear she'd buried that morning, now resurfacing like ripples on a still pond, disturbed by a stone. "Details," Ethan said, his voice a low rumble that cut through the hush, crossing his arms over his broad chest. The emblem on his vest, the iron fist gripping a shattered chain, seemed to pulse in the light, a silent reminder of oaths that didn't break. Joshua pulled a crumpled notepad from his pocket, flipping it open with grease-stained fingers. "SUV was unmarked, but I got eyes on it circling back toward the old warehouse district. Driver's got a rep, works for Gino's crew, the kind that collects on bad debts with broken knuckles. If the uncle's tangled up, they're not just looking for him, they're sniffing for loose ends." He glanced at Sophia, softening his tone. "Like you, kid." Sophia's grip tightened on Clara's sleeve, the fabric bunching under her small fist. The compound, once a sanctuary of clinking tools and easy banter, now felt exposed. The chain-link fence, a flimsy veil against the encroaching shadows of the city. Ethan felt the old pull in his gut, the same one that had gripped him in desert foxholes, where promises meant the difference between life and regret. His daughter, little Mia, her face pale against hospital sheets, had whispered her last wish. "Make it better for someone, Dad." He'd buried that vow under miles of highway, but here it was, raw and demanding, wrapped in this girl's fragile hope. Marcus lumbered over, wiping his hands on a rag that hung from his belt, his massive frame casting a long shadow that swallowed half the picnic table. "We ride out now, Flusham?" His voice was a gravelly proposition, eyes narrowing under bushy brows. Tyler, leaning against his bike with arms crossed, shook his head. "Not like that. We hit 'em with facts, not fists. Remember the mill run, crooked foreman, kids working shadows. We exposed the books, not the bones." The group murmured agreement, a ripple of nods underscoring their code. Justice through truth, loyalty as the sharpest blade. Ethan scanned their faces, veterans all, bound not by blood, but by the iron vow sworn under firelit skies where survival hinged on trust. Clara guided Sophia to a bench near the garage wall, the wood worn smooth by countless gatherings. "Breathe, sweetheart," she murmured, her voice like cool balm on fevered skin. The nurse's hands, scarred from years of stitching wounds both seen and unseen, checked the girl's pulse with practiced ease. Sophia nodded, but her gaze locked on Ethan, seeking the anchor he'd become in her storm-tossed world. "What if they take me back?" she whispered, the words barely audible over the distant whine of a power tool. Clara's eyes met Ethan's across the lot, a silent exchange heavy with resolve. "They won't. Not while we're breathing." Ethan turned back to the group, the sun warming his neck as he traced a finger along the map still spread on the table. "Joshua, you and Tyler take the east flank. Scout the warehouses, but stay shadows. No engagement." He paused, his mind mapping routes like old battle lines, the scent of sun-baked earth mingling with the oil on his gloves. "Marcus, you're with me. We head to the aid office. Lean on our contact. Get that temporary paper in motion before Reyes circles back." The plan wove through the air like smoke from a dying fire, each rider absorbing their role, engines keying in their minds before the throttles even turned. As the bikes fired up, a low chorus of roars that vibrated through the ground like thunder rolling in from the horizon. Sophia stood, the jacket slipping slightly from her shoulders. "I want to go," she said, her voice small but steady, surprising even herself. Ethan crouched, level with her, the heat from his engine washing over them both. "Not this run, kid, but soon. You'll ride with us when it's right." He placed a hand on her shoulder, the leather of his glove rough against her cheek as she leaned in, the gesture sealing an unspoken pact. The convoy split, 3 bikes peeling out toward the city core, dust kicking up in golden plumes, while Joshua and Tyler veered east, their taillights winking like fireflies into the haze. Back at the compound, Clara led Sophia inside, the door creaking shut behind them like a promise locked in place. The clubhouse enveloped them in warmth. The fire from the night before reduced to glowing embers, casting dancing lights on shelves lined with faded photos, riders at dawn patrols, arms linked in unbreakable circles. Clara busied herself with a first aid kit, not for wounds, but for the invisible scars, drawing out Sophia's story in gentle probes. "Your uncle, what did he say about those favors?" Sophia hesitated, tracing patterns in the dust on the table, the air thick with the aroma of cooling coffee. "He worked for men who hurt people if you didn't pay, said I was safer away, but he never came." Her voice cracked, the weight of abandonment pressing down, but Clara's nod was steady, a lighthouse in fog. Outside, the scouts' absence stretched the afternoon into tense vigilance. Ethan and Marcus navigated the urban sprawl, the bikes weaving through traffic choked with horns and exhaust, the skyline looming like judgmental giants. At the Family Shield Network office, a squat building tucked between a pawn shop and a laundromat, they met their contact, a harried woman named Lena with files stacked like fortifications. "Reyes already called," she said, pushing glasses up her nose, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. "Says the girl's a flight risk. Uncle's got priors for evasion. But if you can prove stability..." Ethan laid out their case, voices low, the hum of the city filtering through cracked windows. Marcus added details of the compound's safety nets, rotating watches, community ties forged in service, not suspicion. By dusk, papers in hand, temporary guardianship stamped with reluctant approval, the duo rode back, the cooling air whipping at their faces, carrying the faint salt of resolve. But as they crested the hill toward the compound, Joshua's bike was already there, idling with urgent impatience. "SUVs parked near the old tracks," he reported, helmet dangling from his handlebars, sweat beading on his forehead. "The two guys inside watching, and I overheard. They're calling in reinforcements. Uncle's debts run deeper than we thought. Involves some city brass turning blind eyes." Ethan's grip tightened on the bars, the engine's vibration mirroring the pulse of anger in his veins. This wasn't just protection, it was a stand against the rot that preyed on the vulnerable, a moral line drawn in the sand. Sophia emerged as they gathered, the twilight painting her face in soft purples, her stance straighter now, infused with the crew's unyielding spirit. "What now?" she asked, stepping into the circle. Ethan looked at her, the stars beginning to prick the sky like distant vows. "We hold and we fight clean. That's our promise." The riders nodded, engines humming in anticipation, the night air alive with the scent of impending rain and unbreakable bonds. Shadows gathered, but so did their light, a chosen family, riding toward the heart of justice, one turn at a time. The twilight deepened into a velvet shroud over the compound, the first stars piercing the sky like hesitant witnesses to the gathering storm. Ethan paced the gravel lot, his boots grinding small stones into dust, the faint scent of impending rain mixing with the oily residue of cooling engines. The riders formed a loose semicircle around the scarred picnic table, maps folded away, but the roots etched in their minds like old tattoos. Sophia sat on the edge of the bench, her small frame silhouetted against the clubhouse's warm glow spilling from the windows. The oversized jacket now a badge of belonging draped over her knees. Joshua's report hung in the air, heavy as the humidity pressing down, turning every breath into a measured calculation. "We can't wait for them to make the first move," Ethan said, his voice threading through the quiet like a taut wire, eyes scanning the horizon where the city lights flickered like distant campfires. Marcus nodded, his massive arms crossed, the tattoos on his forearms, faded eagles from desert tours, seeming to stir in the dim light. "Agreed, but we play it our way. No shadows, no surprises. We expose the rot, let the light do the work." Tyler leaned against his bike, fiddling with a chain on his handlebars, the metallic clink punctuating his words. "I've got a buddy in the press, freelance, digs into the underbelly. If Gino's crew is tangled with brass, we leak the threads, make it public before they can twist it." Sophia's voice cut through, soft but insistent, pulling their gazes like a magnet. "What if my uncle shows up? He might lie about me, say I'm trouble." The words trembled on the edge of the night, carrying the chill of old fears. Her fingers twisting the jacket's fringe. Clara knelt beside her, the nurse's steady hand on the girl's knee, her own face lined with the quiet resolve of someone who'd mended more than flesh. "Lies crumble under truth, honey. We've seen it before. Remember the flood run? Families washed out, officials dragging feet. We rode the story to every station till they moved. The fire in the clubhouse crackled faintly behind them, embers glowing like the unyielding core of their bond. Ethan stopped pacing, crouching to Sophia's level, the gravel biting into his knees through worn denim. The air between them hummed with the day's heat radiating from the ground, and he could smell the faint cocoa on her breath, a remnant of comfort in chaos. "Your word's gold here, Ikid. We'll back it, but first we fortify." He rose, signaling to the group, and they moved as one, a fluid machine honed by years of shared roads. Joshua and Tyler revved their engines, the low growl vibrating through the earth like a promise awakening, heading out to set discreet watches on the warehouse perimeter. No confrontations, just eyes in the dark. Marcus hauled crates from the garage, reinforcing the gate with chains that clanged like declarations, while Clara ushered Sophia inside to sketch a timeline of events, her pencil scratching paper in rhythmic strokes that echoed the ticking of an unseen clock. Inside the clubhouse, the air was thicker, laced with the woody smoke of the rekindled fire and the sharp tang of marker ink as they pinned notes to a corkboard. Sophia traced her uncle's name on a sheet, Lauren, a shadow from her past, her hand steadying under Clara's guidance. He worked the docks, hauling for those men, said it was temporary, but the calls came at night, angry voices through thin walls. Clara nodded, her eyes sharp, absorbing the fragments like puzzle pieces. Outside, the night fully claimed the compound, floodlights casting long, stark shadows that danced with the wind rustling through chain link. Ethan stood watch from the porch, the cool metal of the railing under his palms grounding him, memories surfacing unbidden. The desert night when he'd sworn the vow, sand in his throat, brothers' faces lit by muzzle flashes. That promise had pulled him from the abyss once. Now it anchored this makeshift family against the tide. Hours slipped by, marked by the distant wail of city sirens and the occasional hoot of an owl perched on the fence. Tension coiled like a spring in the air, every rustle in the bushes amplifying into threat. Then, just past midnight, Joshua's voice crackled over the comms, static-laced urgency slicing the quiet. Movement at the tracks, SUVs rolling slow, 2 more vehicles trailing. They're probing, not charging. Ethan's pulse quickened, the old instincts firing like synapses in the dark. He radioed back, calm as polished steel. "Hold position, document everything, plates, faces, we're coming." He grabbed his helmet, the leather creaking as he strapped it on, glancing at Sophia through the window. She met his eyes, a nod passing between them, her fear tempered by the firelight's warmth. The ride out was a blur of shadowed asphalt and whipping wind, Ethan's bike leading Marcus's in a tight formation, headlights cutting swaths through the inky night. The warehouse district loomed ahead, skeletal buildings hunched like forgotten giants, the air heavy with the brine of nearby docks and the faint rot of stagnant water. They parked in the lee of a rusted container, engines killed to whispers, creeping forward on foot. Joshua and Tyler emerged from the gloom, faces smeared with camouflage grease, gesturing toward the tracks where the vehicles idled, silhouettes against the faint glow of a security lamp. "Spotted 3 guys," Tyler murmured, breath fogging in the chill. "One's barking orders, matches the enforcer profile, talking about the girl as leverage." Ethan's jaw set, the moral weight settling like lead in his chest. This wasn't a brawl, it was a corruption unearthed, debts that preyed on the innocent, shielded by badges and blind eyes. They watched, phones recording the hushed exchange, voices carrying snippets, mentions of payoffs to City Hall. Lauren's name dropped like a curse. No violence erupted. The enforcers circled once, then peeled away into the labyrinth of alleys, taillights fading like retreating specters. But the encounter left a scar, a confirmation that the shadows reached deeper, intertwining with institutions meant to protect, Back at the compound by pre-dawn, the group debriefed under the harsh fluorescence of the garage. Coffee steaming in mugs that bore the club's emblem. Sophia listened from the doorway, blanket wrapped around her, the night's chill clinging to her skin. "They're scared of exposure," Ethan concluded, rubbing stubble on his chin, the scent of exhaust still sharp on his clothes. "We push that. Clara, get Lena on the line at first light. File the report. Tie it to the guardianship." Nods rippled through the weary faces. Exhaustion etched but spirits unbroken, the vow weaving them tighter. As the sky lightened to a bruised grey, Sophia stepped forward, her voice gaining strength. "I want to help. Tell them what I saw, what he did." Ethan smiled faintly, the first rays catching the iron promise on his vest, glinting like renewed hope. The road ahead twisted with ethical thorns, confronting not just thugs, but the systemic decay that enabled them. But in that moment, their chosen family stood firm, a beacon against the encroaching dawn of trials yet to come. If this story is stirring something in you, hit that like button below. It helps spread these tales of loyalty and redemption far and wide. The first light of dawn crept over the compound like a hesitant ally, painting the chain-link fence in strokes of pale gold and chasing the night's shadows into reluctant retreat. Ethan leaned against the garage doorframe, the rough wood biting into his shoulder through his vest as the scent of fresh dew mingled with the lingering bite of cold coffee from the mugs scattered on the workbench. The riders stirred slowly, their faces etched with the fatigue of vigil, but their eyes burned with the unquenchable fire of purpose. Sophia stood at the center of it all, no longer shrinking but stepping forward, her small hands clenched at her sides, the oversized jacket hanging like a mantle of borrowed courage. The air hummed with the low murmur of voices, punctuated by the distant call of a morning bird, as if the world itself paused to witness their resolve. Clara set down the phone with a soft click, her expression a mix of triumph and caution, the cordless receiver still warm in her palm. "Lena's on board. She's filing the guardianship extension today, citing the threats as endangerment. But she needs Sophia's statement, details, timelines, everything you can give." The nurse's voice carried the steady rhythm of someone who'd navigated bureaucratic mazes before, her calloused fingers tapping the table like a metronome of determination. Sophia nodded, swallowing hard, the dawn light catching the resolve in her eyes, turning them from haunted pools to steady flames. Ethan watched her, the weight of his old promise pressing against his ribs like an invisible chain, the vow to shield the lost, born from the ashes of his daughter's final breath, now alive in this girl's quiet stand. They gathered in the clubhouse, the room bathed in the soft glow of a single lamp, its bulb casting warm halos on the corkboard pinned with notes and photos. The fire had died to ash overnight, but the air retained its smoky embrace, wrapping around them like a shared secret. Sophia sat at the scarred oak table, a notepad before her, pencil gripped tightly as Clara guided her through the words. "Start from the beginning, sweetheart. The nights you heard those voices, the way he looked when he left." Sophia's voice emerged, halting at first, a whisper threading through the quiet. The creak of floorboards under heavy boots, the muffled arguments seeping through thin apartment walls. Lauren's face twisted with fear as he pressed a crumpled 20 into her hand and vanished into the rain-slicked alley. He said, "Stay hidden, Soph. They'll use you to get to me." But I waited. And nothing. Tears welled but didn't fall. Instead, they fueled her words, painting pictures of shadows that loomed larger than the city itself. Ethan paced the room's edge, the floorboards groaning under his steps, his mind racing ahead to the enforcers' retreat, their taillights swallowed by the warehouse gloom. This wasn't just about one man's debts. It was a web, strands connecting low-life collectors to the polished corridors of City Hall, where favors traded hands like counterfeit coins. Tyler hunched over his laptop in the corner, the screen's blue glow illuminating his focused frown, fingers flying across keys as he compiled the footage from the night's watch. Grainy clips of the SUV's plates, snippets of overheard threats. Got timestamps, angles, my press contact's hungry for this. Calls it the iron fist against corruption. Anonymous drop, but it'll hit the wires by noon. His grin was sharp, a flash of teeth in the dimness, the clatter of keys echoing like the first raindrops on tin. Marcus burst through the door then, his bulk filling the frame, bringing with him the crisp morning air laced with the tang of pine from the nearby woods. Perimeter's clear for now, but Joshua's picking up chatter on the scanner. Gino's boys are mobilizing. Words out about the girl. They're painting us as kidnappers to cover their tracks. His voice rumbled like an idling engine, fists clenching at his sides, the tattoos on his arms coiling like awakened serpents. The room tensed, the air thickening with the scent of resolve and faint sweat. Every rider leaning in as Ethan stopped pacing, his silhouette stark against the window. Let them spin it. Truth's our ride. He turned to Sophia, crouching once more, the level gaze bridging the gap between guardian and charge. You ready to tell it all? To Lena, to whoever asks? Her nod was firm, the pencil pausing mid-stroke, ink bleeding slightly on the page like a vow set in black. For you. For all of you. The words hung, simple yet seismic, binding her deeper into the fold, the chosen family that had pulled her from the sidewalk's chill. Clara gathered the pages, folding them carefully into an envelope, her movements precise as a surgeon's, while outside, engines coughed to life. Joshua returning from his loop, the gravel crunching under tires slick with morning mist. The compound stirred fully now, the sun climbing to warm the metal of bikes lined like faithful steeds, their chrome catching glints that promised motion, confrontation without chaos. By mid-morning the sedan arrived again, Detective Reyes stepping out with a file under her arm, her blazer crisp against the softening light, the officer trailing but keeping distance this time. No hostility in her stride, just the wary curiosity of someone who'd glimpsed the rider's code in action. Ethan met her at the gate, hands visible, voice even as the wind rustled the fence links. We have what you need, proof she's safer here than anywhere else. Reyes's eyes flicked to Sophia, visible through the open clubhouse door, the girl standing tall beside Clara, envelope in hand. They talked in low tones, the sun warming their backs, the air alive with the hum of distant traffic and the faint, reassuring growl of idling bikes. Sophia approached, offering the statement without flinching, her voice steady as she recounted the fragments of fear, the uncle's entanglements, that now threatened to ensnare them all. Reyes scanned the pages, her expression shifting from skepticism to a grudging acknowledgement, the moral undercurrent pulling at her like an undertow. This ties into bigger cases, payoffs, neglected reports. If it's true... She trailed off, pocketing the envelope, her gaze meeting Ethan's with a spark of alliance. I'll push it up the chain, but watch your backs. These threads unravel messy. As she drove away, dust swirling in her wake like exhaled secrets. The compound exhaled too, a collective breath of fragile victory. Tyler's phone buzzed moments later, his contact confirming the story's leak, headlines brewing in the digital ether, whispers of scandal rippling through news feeds, exposing the enforcer's links to shielded corruption. Ethan gathered the crew under the awning, the midday sun filtering through leaves overhead, casting dappled patterns on their faces. Sophia stood among them, no longer at the edge, her presence a quiet force. We're not done, he said, the words carrying the weight of roads yet travelled, the scent of heated asphalt rising from the lot. But we've lit the fuse, loyalty holds, the rest falls. Nods passed like handshakes, engines revving in affirmation, the roar a symphony of unbreakable bonds. Shadows lingered in the city's veins, but here in the heart of their vow, light pushed back, one truth at a time, forging redemption from the frayed edges of despair. The ride continued, moral compasses true, toward horizons where justice waited, patient and unyielding. The midday sun beat down on the compound like a relentless interrogator, turning the gravel into a shimmering haze that distorted the air and made every step a test of endurance. Ethan wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his glove, the leather absorbing the salt like a sponge as he surveyed the riders scattered across the lot. Their bikes stood in a vigilant row, chrome edges glinting with deceptive calm, the faint scent of hot metal and sun-baked rubber hanging heavy. Sophia lingered near the picnic table, her fingers tracing the worn grain of the wood, the envelope of her statement now a talisman in Reyes's hands, but its echoes still vibrating through her like aftershocks. The leak had gone live. Tyler's contact had confirmed it over a crackling phone line, headlines flickering across screens citywide. Biker Brotherhood exposes graft in child neglect case. Whispers of Gino's crew and their ties to padded city coffers were unraveling, but unraveling threads could snag and pull hard. Clara emerged from the clubhouse, her steps measured, and carrying a tray of iced water that sweated condensation onto the metal. Reyes called back, preliminary reviews in motion. But the brass is circling wagons. Expect pushback. Her voice was steady, laced with the quiet authority of someone who'd stared down worse odds in emergency rooms, where lives hung on split-second truths. Sophia looked up, her face flushed from the heat, the jacket folded beside her like a discarded skin. Does that mean they'll come here, pretend we're the bad ones? The question hung, fragile as a spider's web in the breeze rustling the fence, her eyes searching Ethan's for the anchor he'd become. He knelt beside her, the gravel digging into his knees, the warmth of the ground seeping through his jeans. They might try, but promises like ours don't bend to lies. We stand, kid, all of us. The group converged, as if summoned by the words, Marcus's heavy footfalls crunching stones, Tyler pocketing his phone with a nod that spoke volumes. Joshua leaned against his bike, arms crossed, his scout's vigilance etched in the tight lines around his eyes. The air thickened with unspoken strategy, the distant hum of traffic from the highway a mocking underscore to their isolation. Ethan rose, unfolding the map once more on the table, its creases like fault lines ready to shift. Tyler's leak bought time, but Gino's not done. Joshua, any eyes on the enforcers? The scout shook his head, the sun catching the silver streak in his hair. Quiet since dawn, but that's the calm before. They're regrouping. Word from a dock contact says Lauren's surfaced, holed up in a flophouse near the river, talking deals to clear his slate, using the girl as bait. Sophia's breath caught, a sharp intake that sliced the tension, her small frame tensing like a bowstring. Memories flooded her unbidden, the dim apartment, Lauren's shadowed figure in the doorway, the metallic tang of fear in the air as he muttered about fixing it before slipping away. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder, the gesture firm yet gentle, grounding her in the present where loyalty formed an unbreakable circle. His own ghosts stirred then, the desert vow replaying in his mind, brothers pulling each other from the sand, oaths sworn under a merciless sky that no betrayal could erase. That promise had rebuilt him after Mia's light faded, turning wanderers into family. Now it armored them against the corruption slithering from the city's underbelly. Marcus grunted, his voice a low thunder. We go get him, bring him in, make him spill clean. But Tyler cut in, sharp as a switchblade. No, we draw them out, set a meet through back channels, record it all, let the truth choke their lies. The debate swirled, voices overlapping in the heat, the scent of sweat and resolve mingling with the faint ozone of an approaching storm cloud blotting the horizon. Ethan listened, his mind a tactical map, weighing the moral scales. Vengeance tempted, but their code demanded justice, the kind that healed rather than scarred. Tyler's right. We invite the exposure. Clara, reach out to Lena. Frame it as a family reconciliation under watch. Sophia, you with us on this? She met his gaze, the fear in her eyes hardening into something fiercer, like embers fanned to flame. Yeah, he owes the truth to me. The words sealed it, a vow from her own lips, binding her deeper into the fold. Plans solidified in the sweltering air, Joshua and Tyler to shadow Lauren's flop, Clara coordinating with the network for legal eyes, Marcus fortifying the compound with extra patrols. Ethan would lead the meet, his presence a beacon of unyielding honor. As they dispersed, engines coughing to life in staccato bursts, the ground trembled faintly, a prelude to the rumble that would carry them forward. By late afternoon, the sky darkened prematurely, thunder grumbling like distant engines as fat raindrops spattered the lot, turning dust to mud that clung to boots like regret. Sophia helped Clara secure the clubhouse, stacking sandbags by the door, the physical task a balm against the churning in her gut. Inside, the air cooled, carrying the petrichor scent through open windows, mingling with the earthy aroma of reheated stew on the stove. "This family's not given," Clara said, wiping her hands on a towel, her eyes kind but piercing. "It's earned, every mile. You've earned it today." Sophia managed a small smile, the first real one since the diner, as lightning flashed, illuminating the photos on the wall, rides through storms, faces linked in triumph. The comms crackled then, Tyler's voice urgent over the static. "Lauren's moving, heading toward the old bridge with two shadows. They're armed, but talking payoff." Ethan's response was immediate, radioing from his bike as the convoy assembled under the downpour, rain sheeting off helmets like silver veils. "Hold the line, we're en route." The ride out was a torrent of motion, water sluicing across windshields, the roar of engines drowning the storm's fury. They converged on the bridge's rusted span, a skeletal arch over the swollen river, where Lauren waited hunched in a rain-slicked coat, flanked by enforcers whose postures screamed unease. Ethan dismounted first, water streaming from his beard, hands raised in the universal sign of parley. The group fanned out behind him, a wall of leather and loyalty, bikes idling like growling sentinels. Lauren's eyes widened at Sophia, visible in the sidecar of Clara's ride, her face pale but set. "Soph, I told you to stay gone," he rasped, voice lost in the rain's patter, but the enforcers shifted, hands twitching near pockets. "This ends now," Ethan called, voice cutting through the gale. "Talk to her, clear the air, or we let the city hear every debt you've dragged her into." Tyler's hidden recorder whirred silently, capturing the exchange as Lauren faltered, the weight of his choices crumbling under the moral onslaught. Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating the scene in stark white, the river churning below, faces taut with revelation. Lauren stepped forward, rain masking tears or sweat, his confession spilling in fragments, the favors for Gino, the bribes to officials who'd buried reports of vulnerable kids like Sophia, the desperation that led to abandonment. No excuses, just raw truth, the kind that corroded corruption from within. The enforcers backed off, phones buzzing with incoming alerts from the spreading scandal, their resolve fracturing like the storm-tossed waves. As the rain eased to a drizzle, Ethan nodded to Sophia, who dismounted, approaching her uncle with Clara at her side. "You're not family anymore," she said simply, the words a quiet thunder, "but you can make it right." Lauren nodded, broken but unbowed, agreeing to turn state's evidence under protection, the enforcers slinking away into the mist as sirens wailed in the distance, Reyes's team drawn by the leak's momentum. Back at the compound, The crew gathered under the awning, steam rising from mugs of hot tea, the air cleansed and sharp. Sophia leaned against Ethan, exhaustion winning, but a peace settling in her bones. The vow had held, pulling light from shadows, justice from the jaws of despair. Yet whispers lingered. Gino's higher ties still coiled, promising one final stand. The road twisted on, but their bond, forged in rain and redemption, rode stronger. The storm's remnants clung to the compound like a fading echo, the air heavy with the clean, mineral scent of rain-soaked earth and the subtle ozone tang that followed lightning's fury. Ethan stood on the porch, water dripping from the eaves in rhythmic plinks, his vest sodden, but his stance unyielding as the crew filtered back inside. Sophia walked beside Clara, her steps lighter now, the sidecar's damp chill yielding to the warmth radiating from the clubhouse door. The confrontation at the bridge lingered in their eyes, a raw unraveling of secrets under the sky's indifferent gaze. But victory hummed beneath the exhaustion, a quiet engine idling toward peace. Lauren's confession, captured and handed off to Reyes's arriving team, had cracked the facade. Sirens had wailed not as threats, but as harbingers of accountability, lights flashing blue and red against the river's churn. Inside, the fire roared back to life, logs crackling under Marcus's careful tending, flames dancing shadows across faces marked by the night's toll. Tyler slumped into a chair, his laptop open on the table, screen glowing with incoming messages, reporters circling the story like hawks, the leak blooming into full exposure. "Headlines are hitting hard," he said, voice rough from shouting over the gale. Scrolling through feeds that detailed Gino's web, bribes to social services, buried files on neglected youth, enforcers shielded by desk-bound allies. The air filled with the rich aroma of Clara's stew simmering on the stove, chunks of potato and carrot bobbing in broth, a simple anchor pulling them from the brink. Sophia perched on the edge of a bunk, peeling off the wet jacket, her hair drying in frizzy waves that caught the firelight like a halo of reclaimed innocence. Ethan knelt before her, the floorboards creaking under his weight, his hands still smelling of rain and throttle grip. "You were brave out there, kid, braver than most." His words carried the gravel of old roads. Eyes reflecting the embers, eyes that had seen too many losses, but now held a spark of mending. Sophia met his gaze, the haunted wideness softened by belonging, her small voice steady. "I wasn't alone. You all. You made it, so I didn't have to be." The room quieted, the crew exchanging nods, the unspoken vow weaving tighter. From desert sands to this hearth, loyalty wasn't forged in blood, but in choices that defied the world's cynicism. Marcus rumbled a laugh, deep and reassuring, clapping Tyler on the back. "Kid's got the right of it. We ride for this." As the night deepened, Reyes returned, her sedan crunching gravel under tires slick with mud, the detective's face illuminated by the porch light as she stepped out alone this time. No officer, no backup, just a folder tucked under her arm. The rain had stopped, leaving puddles that mirrored the stars emerging overhead, pinpricks of light in the vast black. Ethan met her halfway, the cool night air brushing their skin like a sigh of relief. "Lauren's in custody," she said, voice low, handing over copies of statements already buzzing through channels. His testimony's gold ties Gino straight to the mayor's aid, payoffs for looking away from cases like Sophia's. The feds are involved now. It's unraveling fast. Her eyes flicked to the clubhouse window, where Sophia's silhouette moved with Clara, sharing a bowl of stew. "You did right by her. Not the system, but right." Ethan took the folder, the paper crisp against his calloused fingers, a tangible weight lifting from his shoulders. Memories surfaced then, unbidden but welcome. Mia's tiny hand in his, her whisper in the hospital's sterile hush, urging him to protect what the world overlooked. He'd wandered after, roads blurring into numbness until the iron vow called him back, a family chosen in the crucible of survival. Now that promise bloomed here, in this girl's quiet strength, turning personal redemption into a legacy. "We all did," he replied, the words simple, profound. Reyes nodded, a rare smile cracking her professional mask before driving off into the dark, taillights fading like the threats they'd faced. The crew gathered around the fire as midnight approached, mugs steaming with Clara's herbal tea, the scent of chamomile cutting through the wood smoke. Joshua recounted the bridge in hushed tones, his scout's precision painting the scene, the enforcer's retreat, Lauren's shoulders slumping under truth's burden, the river's roar underscoring every word. Sophia listened, nestled between Clara and Tyler, her laughter tentative at first, then genuine when Marcus mimed the storm's fury with exaggerated gestures. The compound felt alive, walls echoing with stories, not of battles won with force, but with integrity that outlasted corruption. Outside, the bikes stood sentinel, dew beading on chrome, ready for whatever dawn brought, but tonight rest claimed them. A hard-earned pause in the endless ride. Dawn broke clear and golden, sunlight filtering through the trees to gild the lot, chasing away the last vestiges of storm. Ethan woke early, the scent of coffee brewing pulling him to the kitchenette, where Sophia already stirred, pouring mugs with careful hands. "For you," she said, offering one, steam curling between them like a bridge. He took it, the warmth seeping into his palms, mirroring the thaw in his chest. The crew emerged one by one, breakfast unfolding under the awning, eggs sizzling on a portable grill, bacon crisping with pops that drew smiles. News updates crackled from Tyler's radio, arrests rippling through the city, Gino's operation crumbling under federal scrutiny, the mayor's office scrambling with denials that rang hollow. By noon, Lena from the Family Shield Network arrived, her van bumping over the access road, paperwork in tow. The guardianship was formalized, stamps and signatures sealing Sophia's place, not in foster limbo, but in this chosen fold, with Ethan as legal guardian, the crew as extended kin. She hugged Clara fiercely, then Ethan, her arms tight around his waist, the moment raw and wordless. "Home," she whispered, the word foreign yet fitting, like a key turning in a long-locked door. The riders cheered softly, engines revving in celebration, the sound a joyful thunder that vibrated through the ground. As the sun arced high, casting long shadows that danced with promise, Ethan led a short ride, just a loop through the outskirts, Sophia in the sidecar, wind tousling her hair. The world blurred into greens and golds, the highway's hum a lullaby of freedom. Back at the compound they parked in formation, the emblem on their vests catching the light, a fist around a broken chain, symbol of vows that endured. Shadows of the past lingered faintly, Gino's trial looming, Lauren's path to atonement uncertain, but justice's wheel turned moral and inexorable. For Ethan, redemption wasn't a destination, but this, a girl laughing beside him, brothers at his back, honor as the true north on every road. Sophia's eyes sparkled as she dismounted, the sidewalk's ghosts banished, replaced by the roar of family. The iron vow had ridden into her storm and carried her out, proving that promises, once kept, reshaped worlds. In the quiet aftermath, loyalty's legacy stretched ahead, unbreaking, eternal. Thank you for joining us on this ride of redemption and unbreakable bonds. If these stories of chosen family and moral courage move you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We've got more tales waiting to roll out. Your support keeps the engines running.